The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.
Welcome to the Tim Heale Podcast. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories. I've got a great guest in today and we're going to have a fantastic conversation. Without too much further ado, let's bring him in. Welcome, Edward.
Oh my God, I get entrance applause and everything.
Absolutely, you deserve it.
You know who you're dealing with then.
Absolutely. I guess you get that all the time when you walk into a room.
I wish, but no.
So, Edward, if you can tell me when and where you were born, and if you can describe to me what it was like, where you grew up, the schools you went to, and the education that you received.
Sure. Well, all of those things are a little sideways. All of those things are a little sideways. I was born in 1986. I was born in central Pennsylvania. It was very Amish country farmland. The house I grew up in, we were smack dab between a bunch of farms and a gun shop. So if that gives you any indication of what that was like, it was kind of wild, but, we're in the middle of nowhere. And I think, everything is good and bad at the same time, and so the good part of that is that my parents felt comfortable giving us our independence, so from a very young age, we were able to ride our bikes alone, with my sisters or our friends from the neighborhood around town. And we just got this sense of, I think, self from a very young age, which was great. But we started in public school. That didn't go very well. And so then my parents moved us over to a private Catholic school about 40 minutes away. And then we ended up moving closer to that area, so that we weren't driving 40 minutes every day one way to get there. But, it was fine. I think they kind of beefed on the education because they were so worried about, teaching religion and whatnot that we kind of missed some basics, So I wouldn't say it was the best of education, but the experience itself was educational in the sense that, I learned how to maneuver around those that I'm not always going to agree with and or get along with. And that's not to say I didn't have friends. I had great friends. I'm still in touch with some of them. But, like growing up in central Pennsylvania and being who I am, that was not really like, a comfortable place to be. So I had this bad taste in my mouth about being in school in the first place. So I just kind of like circumvented college and didn't go. I moved to New York right away when I was 18, like literally 3 days after my graduation, and was like, I'm out. Bye.
So, did you grow up as Amish, or you were just stuck in that Amish area?
No, I need to get better at clarifying that because I mentioned that I grew up around like in Amish farmland, and people always assume that I am, but no, I did not grow up Amish.
So, because they have a slightly different take on going to school and all that malarkey, don't they?
Right. Totally different perspective on all of that.
Yeah. So, what was your first impression of your first school like your kindergarten, or what was that kind of like?
I mean, school terrified me because, again, like my parents were very cool and we had like lots of games at home that were like, memory games and learning games, and everything was about learning. My parents were very, very good at that. So we were having fun at home learning, and then going off to like preschool, I hated it, because it was so structured and so like not fun. It wasn't games. It was like sit down at a desk all day. And when you're used to parents being like, let's play this board game, and it's actually teaching you about like memory and association and whatnot, like it's just brilliant. But I have this very clear memory of my dad leaving me at preschool for the first time, and I was like clinging onto the door, screaming and crying because I thought he was leaving and going away forever and leaving me in this like preschool church thing that he dropped me in.
How many kids have been through that experience?
Oh my God, I think probably all of them. But it's this very distinct memory of him just like walking away and getting into his car and driving away and thinking like, am I stuck here?
Is this it forever?
Yeah, like no.
How relieved were you when he returned later in the day?
Oh my God. I don't remember that part, but I probably was more like, oh, okay, this is okay now. Like, I think I get this. Like, I understand what's happening. Because I didn't, I had an older sister and I knew that she went off to school, but she wasn't going to be there, and neither were my parents. So it was just kind of like, what's happening?
Stuck with all these other kids.
Yeah. These people.
Yes. So kind of move on a little bit then. What was the next school? Is it middle school you go to next? Your junior
Well, I mean,
school?
so like I said, I started in public school, and I was severely bullied. I was beat up in the second grade, and that was kind of like the end of it. Like, I never finished second grade because my parents were like, "We're taking you out of school," and I was already like in advanced classes at that point, so I didn't lose anything by missing the end of second grade, and I just started third grade the following year. In this other private school that we went to. So, it was just Catholic school all the way up. And I was always a misfit. I never really fit in, um, as much as I tried. It was kind of like a master class on acting, right? Trying to fit in with the cool kids. Because my school is also very small. My graduating class was 33 people. So,
Blimey.
Everyone knew everyone and everyone else's business and what their parents did and what their parents were doing. And it was just, there was no hiding. And so me trying to like blend in with everybody else, like, didn't go so well. And then towards the end, like the teachers had it out for me, and like, it wasn't good. It wasn't a good environment at all.
So did you have nuns there, being a Catholic school, or?
Yeah, we had a couple nuns. I don't think that they're around any longer, as they were quite old. But also, like, when you're a teenager, you have a weird perspective on age. So like, they could have been 105. I don't know. They could have been 60.
Yeah.
I don't know. But in my perception of them as a teenager was just like these fossils running around in habits, and like, it was the sister act of it all. It was like
giving it old spectacles, testicles, wallet, and watch.
Exactly, yeah.
So because you moved closer to the school, so you would cut down the 40-minute drive. You moved closer to the school. What was the area like where you moved to?
I mean, it was like the quote unquote city, right? Like it was like 50,000 something people versus the 2,500 we grew up around, and most of those we never saw. But, it was different. It was like we had access to things. There was a mall down the street. There was a movie theater down the street. And if we wanted to do things, we could, instead of having to like plan in advance. But on top of that, we were all very involved in like extracurricular activities. I was in band, I was in choir, I played sports. I was like singing the national anthem before the basketball games that I would play in, and so it just kind of was like we were always at school. Like, we were never at home. Because we had a lot of stuff going on. So it was that was a big change, like being involved in more activities after school and having more access to friends and people instead of being in the middle of a farm. That was helpful for like development.
So, what instrument did you play then if you were in band?
I played a couple. So I started out with playing an alto sax, and then I moved to a tenor sax, and then I was playing keyboard for a little bit. I really wanted to do like drums and trumpet, but like I didn't have the patience or the brain space for that at the time because, like I said, we were very busy with other things. But piano and saxophone were like my main two.
So did your parents start you off with a piano early on?
Not on purpose. I mean, my mom played piano, and my dad is a guitar player, singer-songwriter, and so music was always in the family. Both of my sisters sing. They're both great, and I do as well. So it was always there, and there was a piano in the house. And even though there wasn't like go to your piano lesson, I would sit down at the piano and I would learn and figure it out. And my mom would be like, okay, well, this note right here, that's middle C, and that's right here. And so then everything around that, figure it out. And I would, and I did. I taught myself how to play, and I was, at one point I was actually kind of pretty good, but that's all fallen to the wayside.
So what sports did you play?
I played baseball for, I think, 5 or 7 years. I played football for 2, and I played basketball for 4.
So what position were you in football?
I was left tackle.
Offense, eh?
Probably both. I don't know. I wasn't very good, but you know, I took up a lot of space, and that's what they needed, right? So my job was just to like rush the person in front of me, and that's it.
Stop them from getting to the quarterback, and that's it.
Right,
Just-
right. The quarter
just give
something
'em a
out of you,
biff.
sure.
Terrific. So that was that's high school, was it?
Middle school, high school, yeah.
Yeah. So you graduate. What happened on the graduation? Did you
Well,
have
I barely
did you have
graduated.
a
I'll say that.
did you have a
Um,
prom?
oh yeah, no, we had a prom. We had junior and senior prom. That was, that was the thing. I was just talking about that the other day, actually. But yeah, no, I barely graduated because I didn't care. I knew what I wanted to do, and it wasn't anything that I was learning in school. And so by like 10th grade, 11th grade, I'd like checked out. I was like, I don't need to be here. With 2 years still left to go.
Fair one.
Yeah, but like I said, like when I graduated, I think my graduation date was May 27th or so. And then my lease for my apartment in New York was June 1st. And I was like, all right, graduated, packing the bags, getting out of here, bye.
So
Couldn't wait to leave.
how did you fund it?
I had a lot of help. I mean, first of all, I had a job from the time I was like 15, so I was working. But it was my grandparents also helped me with moving costs, and my parents helped me get the apartment because, not that they were not supportive or supportive. It was more like I essentially told them, like, I'm not going to college. This is happening. You can help me or I will go without your help. But one way or another, I'm leaving. And so they just kind of were like, I was also kind of a dick. So they just kind of like bent the will and was like, okay. And they kind of helped me get to the city and get set up in the city and be a person. But, I've had, like I said, I was still working. I still had money of my own. It wasn't a lot, but it wasn't hard for me to find jobs. What it was hard was keeping the job once I got it. So in like the first year of living in the city, I think I had like 4 or 5 jobs that I just got fired from within a month. It was just like, oh God, like what's happening? And at that point I certainly could have left and been like, deuces, I'm out. But I stuck to it and I'm glad I did. The first week I was in New York, my apartment was broken into by the fire escape. And I was in the shower when it happened. And like I had no idea what's happening. I was in the shower. I was singing in the shower, living my like Christina Aguilera dreams. And then I got out of the shower and my bedroom was trashed. And it was like, what happened? So I called the cops and they came and they filed a police report and they like stole some. I didn't have anything. They stole my class ring, which was probably the most expensive thing I had at that point. But I hated my high school. So like, you can have it. I would have given it to you. All you had to do was ask.
So what did you want to be then? What was the ambition? Why did you to move to New York in the first place?
Yeah, so I wanted to be a pop star, I wanted to be Britney Spears. I grew up listening to my dad's records and Elvis and the Beatles and Gentle Giants and Steel Eye Span and all these great, Elvis and all these great records that lined the walls. Like he had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. And we would just leaf through them and play them and listen to them and back to back to back to back to back. And I had a huge musical influence. So by the time I was 11 or 12, I was writing music. And I was afforded a great opportunity at the local college to record a 3-song demo with some of their recording technology students. And my dad had a recording studio in the house that was kind of piecemealed together and whatnot, and I recorded a full-length album with him in high school. And so I moved to New York with that album being like, I'm gonna do it. And I did the whole downtown music scene, and it was bleak. It was really quite disheartening. And so I kind of slowly backed away from that and went into musical theater, which was my second love. And so I kind of I went and did that for, I don't know, 15 years.
Wow. Musical theatre. What was the first musical you got your break in?
I don't know if it was a break, but it's what kind of got me to want to do it. I was 9 and I was doing The Wizard of Oz. I was the mayor of Munchkinland, and I was
All
like,
right.
I was a big kid always, so I'm like bigger than Dorothy. I'm bigger than all the Munchkins, and I'm just like, I'm the mayor of Munchkinland. This giant monster 9-year-old. But I mean, I think if we're going like on like quote unquote break, I was very lucky. I worked pretty consistently, but the first show I booked out of New York was 2008 at this little rinky-dink dinner theater in Ohio, and I was doing Miracle on 34th Street, and I was the DA who was like putting Santa Claus in prison, and it was the whole thing. Boo! I know I got to be the bad guy, but but yeah, I mean, I made really good friends on that contract, and I still am friends with like one or two of those people, and it was formative years, But yeah, so if we're going by breaks, that wasn't like a big glamorous break, but it was my first like booked job, and I kind of went from there.
So, what was your favorite job?
Oh man, my favorite. I have a couple, and like for different reasons. I did this production of a show called Rooms in Connecticut, and it was the first time it was being done outside of New York after it had been done off Broadway. And the original cast, they're like Leslie Kritzer, she was in it, and she's getting big now. She just was on the season finale of Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Wonderful Broadway star. She's so talented, but like she originated that show, and then I went and did it for the first time outside of the city, and it was this woman, Megan, that I was working with. She was great. The show was great. And it just felt so good, like that kind of work, because we were really kind of redoing it, and we were getting new songs and new scenes and new dialogue and dialogue changes and whatnot from the writers and producers as we were doing it. I was like 22 or 23 years old, and it just felt so good to be doing that kind of work. So that was one of them. Another one was Into the Woods that I did in Nantucket. I'm still good friends with the guy who was my other prince. I was Cinderella's prince. He was Rapunzel's prince, and he lives like 6 blocks away from me. We're still very good friends. And I think 42nd Street I did in Virginia, and that was a full circle moment because my first Broadway show that I ever saw on Broadway was 42nd Street. So it was this like really great moment where I was like, I get to step into the show that I've loved for so long and play the role that I've wanted to play for so long, and it was good. And I'm still very good friends with some of those people too. So, you kind of like, it's the irony thing of like the business. The majority of the people who are entertainers, like they move to New York to do musicals, but then they just end up working everywhere around the country except for New York. And it's kind of like the running joke, because you move here to do it, and then all of these other theaters come in, you go to their auditions, and then you get farmed out to like Nebraska or something to go do a show for no dollars a week. And it's brutal, but it's fun to a point, until it's not anymore.
So what was the longest run you did?
Oh my God, the longest run that I did was a production of Hairspray. This is actually a great segue for the book too, because because I was doing this really long contract of Hairspray. It was 18 weeks, which is unheard of. Like, unless you were on Broadway or doing a tour, the longest that you're going to be on a contract is maybe 8 weeks, maybe. Most of them are 6 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks is kind of like upwards of average. But I was out there doing Hairspray, and we started in like late June, and we didn't get back until the end of November. And it was during that period of time that my tumor popped up under my arm, and it was kind of growing and getting kind of scary, and I was doing a show while all that was happening.
So
but
before we move on to that, what role were you playing?
I was Corny Collins.
Oh.
Yeah, the James Marsden role. I was much younger back then, so that would make sense.
Yeah. Terrific. So then, that's when it really started. That's when it started to come and bite you in the bum. So tell us about how it progressed. What
Sure, and
happened?
what was really unfun about it, other than the whole thing, is that I started to feel like I had some momentum. Like I had spent a good 5 years at this point, 4 or 5 years at this point, just like working my ass off back to back to back, and like sending things to casting houses and showing up to all the auditions and doing all the things and really doing what I thought you were supposed to do, like quote unquote supposed to do, to be a working professional actor. And I started to get calls from bigger casting houses and things were starting to happen for me. And it felt so good. And I was like, I'm going to go do this contract. And when I come back, like everything's going to be different. I'm going to level up. I'm going to do bigger things. And then this like tumor popped up under my arm. And, when I did come back, everything did change, but just not the way that I thought thought it was going to. And, be careful how you ask for things, right? So I got back, end of November, did the Thanksgiving thing that we do here in the States. And, by the end of by the end of November, I had a diagnosis. And by the 5th of December, I was in my first round of chemo. So it was a very fast turnaround. And I just kind of watched my entire life get like flushed down the drain of like, oh, well, I know you wanted to do these things, but sorry about it. You have to do all of this horrible, horrible stuff first. And in hindsight, I talk about this a lot, but in hindsight, it's kind of the best thing that could have ever happened to me because of everything that's going on now with my book. None of that would have happened if I wouldn't have been a cancer patient in the first place.
So, what sort of cancer was it?
It was called rare and large B-cell Burkitt's like non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. There might have been a diffused in there somewhere, but I don't remember where. Like rare, diffused, and large B-cell, whatever. But I don't remember. It's written down in the book somewhere accurately, so I'll refer to that. So basically, it's very rare. There are only a couple hundred cases of it reported worldwide, and none of the demographics surrounding those cases made sense for me at all. And so it was this big question mark as to why. And I think we got to the point where I was like, I don't care why. It doesn't matter why. Fix it. Stop asking why. Give me drugs.
So you said the first bout of chemo. Chemo, by definition, is pretty aggressive to treat a cancer. And did you go through all the normal symptoms of losing your hair, feeling tired all the time, going through all of those symptoms of getting treatment for a cancer?
Yeah. I was supposed to have, I think, either 6 or 8 rounds of chemo. We got to 4 and realized it wasn't working. I would have the chemo, the tumor would shrink, and then after we were done having chemo, it would grow back, and which was terrifying and really kind of like screws with your head. But it just was like trial and error, really, because they didn't know what they were doing. They had no idea what they were doing or what they were dealing with, and so they were shooting in the dark with these different chemo protocols. And my hair fell out. I was put on hormones to like kind of keep my body functioning, and like all these prophylaxis drugs to keep me not sick or picking up anything along the way. And that the first hospital was really awful. Like they again didn't know what they were doing, and I think they were treating me like a dead person that they could just do whatever they wanted to do with for the sake of case studies and whatnot. And it was wild. Once we hit chemo 4 and it was very obviously not working, we switched directions and we went to 30 days of radiation, and then they wanted to do a stem cell transplant where someone else was my donor. And I was like, I am 25 years old. I was in the best shape of my life when I came into this. There is no reason why I cannot be my own donor, and I do not want to be like, I don't want to have a donor. I want to be my donor. Because when you have someone else as your donor, there's so much more that can go wrong. There's a ton of complications. You have to be on medication for the rest of your life. It's a whole mess. And so I was very against this whole thing, and radiation seemed to have worked. It seemed to have shrunk the tumor down. It kept shrinking. It kept getting better and going away. And so I was like, well, if this is the case, then like, why do we have to do anything at all? And so, I finally put my foot down and said a very final no to the hospital and went and got a second opinion. And, that was over. I got my second opinion at Sloan Kettering, and I ended up staying there. And they basically told me, my oncologist told me like, yeah, you don't have to do the stem cell transplant, but you won't make it past 30. And so it was like, oh, cool. Well, then great. And when I went into kind of the stem cell collection part of it, they were looking at my chart and the medications that I was on, that they had put me on, like specifically the prophylaxis. And one of them was an antibiotic that like messes up with your blood counts. And they were like, well, of course you couldn't collect. This is why. And so we were all very angry about that. And we had words with the former oncologist. But, I ended up being able to like donate enough of stem cells to myself to get treated and then re-injected back in. And that's kind of what saved my life.
Wow. I know a bit about non-Hodgkin's high-grade lymphoma. My late wife went through it twice, and she went through the stem cell. They took her stem cell. This is the second time, and unfortunately, what happened is that she got sepsis, and the tumour was far more aggressive the second time, which finally did for her. So I know about that process. So we went through the chemo the first time. She lost all her hair. They said 2 years clear and you'll be fine. A year and 11 months it came back, and it was far more aggressive. And this was back in 2006. So
yeah. Well, and also too, I mean, I'll say that advancements in treatment now are so different than they were in 2006 and from 2012, 11, 12 when I was in, like I don't even think, I mean, I know they're still doing stem cell transplants, but like now it's like CAR T cell treatment and immunotherapy and like all laser treatments. And so it's gotten so advanced in the last couple of years that, I would have loved to have that instead.
So tell us what happened after you recovered the first time. Or you recovered?
Well, I mean, I only had to recover the first time, one time, thankfully. It was, I guess there were kind of different versions of recovering. I had to recover from chemo, and then I had to recover from radiation. And then once I had the stem cell transplant, I had to recover from that. So there were a lot of different recovery points. But after the stem cell transplant, you have like your 100 days where it's like treacherous and you need to be super careful. And then once that 100 days is passed and they kind of make an assessment, then they can say definitively one way or another if treatment is necessary to continue or if you're good. And thankfully, 2 days before my birthday in 2012, I got the call from my oncologist that I was good. And that there was no traceable cancer. Nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary. So they can unofficially say that I was quote unquote cured. So
or
that was
in remission. I think you're never cured from it. You're in remission.
I mean, they used the word cured, so I'm going to go with that. But yes, technically speaking, you are correct. And that was a wild day. I kind of let a year's worth of anxiety and trauma and fear out of me and just like had a big old cry at my desk and called my family and my friends that needed to know and then kind of put it on social media and let everyone else know. And that was kind of the beginning of the journey, to be honest, because like it's easy up until that point, right? Like physically it's tough because your body's being destroyed. But then once you're out of that, then you have to like re-navigate your whole life and figure out what in the world you're going to do and who you are. And like, because you're not the same person. And I cannot stress that enough. You feel different. You've gone through this change. You've gone through a lot of like a war zone with your own body, essentially. And so like figuring out even just like the physical component of like how to feel comfortable in yourself again is like an insurmountable task. And then it goes into the social component. Like, why does everyone annoy me? Why is everything you're saying pissing me off? Like why in the world? And so you have to grapple with that. And then the professional component of it, like I had good things going beforehand and all that got taken away. And, while I was in the hospital, I had people calling me asking to hire me or what my availability was for things. And I had to tell them no. And so I can't pretend that didn't hurt or that didn't feel like a setback. And so you kind of have to grapple with all of those things and piece it back together to create a new version of you that you are happy with. Because going backwards to the person you think you were before, like it's just not going to happen. It's not going to work.
So what did you do then? How did you, once you come out at the end of it, you went into remission, cured? How did you get life back on track?
I mean, have I? I don't know. I think what I originally did was I defaulted to the things that I knew. So I went back to auditioning. I went back to working as soon as I could, and it just was kind of like trying to be around familiar things, so I didn't feel so displaced. And even within those like arenas of familiarity, I still felt out of place. And I never could really articulate why. And I don't even know if I can now. I think part of it is because I was trying too hard to be someone I wasn't anymore. And I really should have let go of that person a little sooner. And I think with the writing of this book and kind of letting all of that out, I was able to kind of like release 24 or 25-year-old me for good. And I don't care about him anymore. But then you also have to consciously be like, I get to decide here. I get to decide what I do moving forward, and finding the version of you that you want to live with for the rest of your life now that you have that opportunity back.
So how did you find it?
I don't know.
Have you found it? Are you there yet?
Maybe. I don't know. Are we ever there, I think, is really the question. But I think that might be a better question for you. Have you found it?
Well, I'm comfortable who I am nowadays.
Right. Yeah.
It took me a little while, but I'm comfortable in my own skin.
There you go. So there you have it. So you finally got there. You've reached nirvana. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm still working on it, but I think I've made a lot of moves in the right direction within the last couple years. And it's unfortunate to me that it's taken this long to see that and admit that to myself, and that prior to this I was just kind of going through the motions and hoping for the best. And like I said, cancer was kind of the best thing that happened to me for that reason, because now I sit here like talking to you and I'm talking to all these other people and having all these other opportunities come up because of this book. And it's kind of like this weird feeling of like, if this wouldn't have happened, where would I even be?
You might have even had a seat on Broadway.
Like this is the maybe, but like maybe like I don't know.
It never was.
It's worth having a longer conversation about that, I think, maybe with myself or with someone else. But it's really strange to think back of like, and there's no point in doing it either, right? Like building this fictional life that may have happened on a different timeline in the quantum of it all, where I didn't get cancer, but I really like having these conversations and talking to people about this experience, because it does definitively help others. It does bring out, whether they've had cancer, they haven't had cancer, they know someone who has, they haven't, there's like this human aspect to it where we're all kind of lost, and then having to face something so stark as like death and mortality and a big derailment in your life will of course change your perspective on things. And so if I can even offer any kind of insight to someone who hasn't had that happen yet, to get them to that place without like circumventing the trauma of it all, then like great.
Well, tell us a little bit about the book and how you went about and why you went about writing it in the first place.
Sure. So I had always kind of thought that I would do something with like the cancer experience that I had, but I was never really sure what. And I didn't want to do a one-man show because I hate them and I think they're so annoying and most of them are not well done. And so why would I think that, why would I have the audacity to think that mine would be different? And so I just scrapped that idea right straight out the gate. And then I had other people being like, you should write a musical. And I just felt like that was an uphill climb that I wasn't willing to make, and there's still a possibility that that could happen down the road for reasons I can't say yet. But, I really thought the book was the better medium for this than something else, because first of all, it's tangible. You can hold it and you can turn the pages, and there's something really lovely and nostalgic about that in a world where everything is digital and we don't own anything. So like having a physical book in my hand, like that feels good. That feels like something I can show people and be like, I made this. This is mine. And the life of it that will be adapted within the next couple years of it being turned into adapted for TV, and then what happens after that we'll see. But that's kind of the trajectory that we're going down, and I always wanted that was always the idea, like, oh, I'm going to write this and it's then going to be a TV show. Like there was never any question about it. But I actually started because I had met someone who was 3 months cancer free when I was 3 years cancer free. And they had articulated to me a lot of the same things that I was feeling back in the early days and had never really said to anyone. And so it was kind of like this, oh, I'm not crazy. I actually did experience this, and it's not just because I'm the problem. And so he and I had this really long conversation, and when he left, when we were done talking, I was just like, this is what I have to do. This makes sense. I need to write about the experience after the fact, because he was saying too, everyone annoys me. I don't know what I want to do with my life. I feel displaced. I don't know what's going on. I feel very lost. And so that was a big light bulb for me. And so what I did after that was contact a couple other people I knew who were around my age who had experienced cancer as well in different variations. And I just kind of said to them, like, does this make sense? If I say to you that you felt this way after the fact, does that ring a bell? And every single one of them was like, oh my God, yes. And it was like, all right, we're done. That's all the market research I need to do. We're good. We're writing this book and we're writing it now. So it took me about a year to do. And I was grateful. I had a desk job that was not very high stakes. And so I essentially got paid to write this book because I sat at the desk all the time. And when I wasn't needed, I just was typing away at the book. And so the whole point of it was to kind of like tell the story of what happened to me and how I got there, but then also tell the story of what surviving it is like, because I feel like that is a missing component within the cancer conversation a lot of the time. Often it's like depicted as like rainbows and butterflies and champagne and, oh, your life, you get to get your life back, but like you don't
get to ring the bell.
I didn't get to ring a bell.
Oh,
there was no bell for me.
You've been mugged off.
I know. I should just like storm into Sloan Kettering and just ring some bell somewhere. Like pull the fire alarm and be like, there's my bell.
So bring us a bit more up to date then. Where are you and what you're doing nowadays?
So right now I am in flux. I am currently looking for a new job. I'm also kind of grappling with the thought of like, do I just want to work for myself? Like, and what does that look like, and how do I do that? And truthfully, the answer is yes. It's just the rest of it that I need to figure out. And in the meantime, we are adapting this book for TV. I was just working on my pitch deck this morning and kind of going down that road. I've been having meetings about it and like doing all the things. So I'm hoping by the end of the year, we have like some tangible timeline of what the shooting of that is going to look like for the pilot at the very least. And kind of between now and then, it's a big old question mark, but I'm not scared. Like I think any other time period in my life, I'd be like, oh no, I need to like hurry up and find something because I don't know what to do. Running out of money. Oh my God, what am I going to do? But right now I'm just kind of like, I don't care. Something will happen. Like, it's not like I'm not trying. It's just that I know that I have 18 years of figuring it out and saving my own ass. So why would this be any different?
Yeah, absolutely. So are you going to do it as an Audible as well? Is
oh my God, it's so funny. Audible? It's so funny you bring this up. I have been working on the audiobook of this since like December. And I've been very, very busy, and it's very hard. And I didn't really realize this because, I listen to audiobooks. I love them. I've done voiceover work. I know how it goes. But for whatever reason, like I sit in front of like I take this mic and I go back into my sound booth in my little vestibule in my apartment, and I am like reading along, and all of a sudden I'm like, I don't know how to read. I don't know what these words are. Like, is there something wrong with me? Like, you just get, your brain falls out and you're like, wait a minute. Because the other part of it too is that I don't just want to read it like one day, blah, blah, blah. Like, I want to give it as like the performance it deserves. And so there's like different voices of different doctors, and trying to keep that straight and organized, and wanting it to be this really great piece. Like, of course, I thought I was going to finish it in a week. And of course, I'm not going to finish it in a week. Like, what an unrealistic, idiotic thing to assume. So yes, in short, there will be an audiobook. It's just not right now. maybe July or August. I would love for it to be July or August. So let's see. We'll go down that road.
Brilliant. So how can people get hold of you? How can people get the book, and how will you let people know when the audio book's out?
Okay, well, first of all, I don't think I've ever said the title of the book. We've just been referring it to as the book. So it's called Cancer, Musical Theater, and Other Chronic Illnesses. So that's one. Cancer, Musical Theater, and Other Chronic Illnesses is the title of the book. And you can find that on Barnes & Noble and on Walmart.com and Apple Books and all of basically anywhere that you want to buy a book. It is also, if you're a New Yorker or in the tri-state area, it is available at the Drama Bookshop on West 39th Street, which is now co-owned by Lin-Manuel Miranda. I have copies in there that you can go scamper off and buy. And then as far as finding me goes, I'm like on every single platform at Edward Miskie, and I'm the only one there, so there will be no mistake as to who I am. But that's Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all of the things.
Terrific. Whoa, what a story. And you're still here to tell it. That's just the tip
of the iceberg, man.
Yeah, you're still here to tell it. Have you got any ambitions to go back into the acting world, back into the musical theatre, to be a thespian?
This is such a long, hard segue, and I don't want to kind of like fizzle out the wrap of this, but I did kind of stick my toe back in over the last year and a half, and I just kind of found it to not be what I want anymore. At least not right now. Maybe down the road someday. Obviously, the book adaptation for screen, I will be in it, so there will be a performance of musical theater and television hybrid there. But it's not something that is in the forefront right now. We're just kind of like diving in face first with the book and everything that's going to be surrounding there. And who knows, down the road, maybe yes, but the immediate is no.
Never say never.
Exactly.
And live every day as though it's your last, because one day it will be.
Yes, it will be.
Well, Edward, thank you so much for telling your story. And
I was so happy to be here, Tim. Thank you.
I'm happy you're still here. You've been a great guest. Thank you.
Me too.
There you go. There's Edward. What a terrific story. So it just proves that you can get over it. You can get through it. So please reach out, have a look at his book, etc., and keep an eye out for when the film or the TV comes out. So until the next one, TTFN. Ta-ta for now.
The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.